Welcome to Brew Crime, the podcast where we drink brews, talk crime, conspiracies, or whatever catches our attention. This is Mike and my co-host.
Oh, I'm Richard Simmons, and I'm back.
Nice. How's the workout routine going?
You know,
Fabulous.
I've got nothing special to say, to be honest with you. This is JT. Hi, everybody. I know I'm a very convincing Richard Simmons.
You know what? This is going to be a little while in the past now because we're recording a couple in a row. But JT, did you see the news story that came out today on July 18th?
I didn't.
That there is a house in Las Vegas that is being searched in the Tupac Shakur murder.
What? What? Really?
Yes, really.
I realized my initial what sounded fake, but seriously,
No.
what?
Yeah. So Jen from our True Crime podcast posted a link on Facebook, and I was reading it, and I'm like, "You'd be fucking kidding me! Like, this murder was a long time ago, like,
90s, right?"
Yeah, I posted on our group, which you'll never find that now because it's going to be a couple weeks. When was Tupac? When was he murdered again? Tupac murder. 1996.
There it
in
is.
September. Like, the fact that they are searching a house this many years later, like, what do they think they can actually find there? That's crazy.
They must be looking for the weapon.
But
there's nothing else you could look for. You'd have to look for the weapon.
Like, they must have a lead. Like, it's crazy.
They'd have to. They'd absolutely have to.
And I don't expect this to ever lead to an arrest or whatever, but all these years later, that's amazing that they're actually raiding a house.
Yes, I'm interested. Yeah. I want to see what happens.
I mean, I'm not a rap fan. I know Tupac because my stepbrother is a huge fan of hip hop and rap. But that's about as far as I go. But still, it should be solved.
I know they did a really cool hologram of Tupac at one point. But that's about where, and I do recognize the fact that he was very foundational in that genre. And in respect that.
Absolutely. California.
That's more than I know. So here we are.
But not murdered in Las Vegas, murdered in prison. We're going back to that.
Oh, yeah. I think you're going to like this one. Hate.
Okay,
Yeah. Because it is very much, it's kind of like what yours was. But I think the person who was murdered a little more high profile.
Okay, yeah.
And so this case is called Crushing the Cannibal, Christopher Scare? Yes. And the Murder of Jeffrey Dahmer.
Jesus Christ. Okay, all right. Wow.
Yeah. See what I did there?
Like, talk about bringing in a huge true crime case here.
Well, and I do realize that Dahmer's been done recently.
Yeah.
A lot. And I do also realize some of the problematic situations that have happened. So I recognize that. I respect that. I am going to speak very briefly in terms of an overview of what Jeffrey Dahmer did, but that is not my focus. My focus is what happened in prison. So if you hear
this is murder in prison. Yeah.
So Christopher Scare and the Murder of Jeffrey Dahmer attracted significant media attention due to the notoriety of Dahmer as the Milwaukee Cannibal. Yeah, right? Dahmer's crimes were gruesome. They involved the murder and dismemberment of 17 men and boys, along with necrophilia and cannibalism, and this, rightfully so, shocked the nation.
Hell yeah.
And perhaps the murder in prison, the murder of Jeffrey Dahmer, was significant because he did what some folks in the nation wish they could do.
I mean, I love barbecue. I'll never be a vegetarian. This is gross. Absolutely gross.
So what I kind of want to do is kind of provide some kind of comprehensive understanding of the circumstances around the murder. I want to talk about the events leading up to, talk about kind of briefly the psychological profile of, I wrote multiple times Christopher Scare, and it is not Scare. I'm going to correct myself now. So if you were yelling at your phone, whatever you listen to, podcast
Bluetooth device.
Yes. His last name was Scarver. Christopher Scarver.
Scarver. Okay.
Yes, this is what happens when you miss the V and the R.
The
But
VR virtual reality. Ooh, that's a bad VR.
yeah, sorry, Zuckerberg. So we're going to briefly talk about the psychological profile of Scarver, examine the impact of Dahmer's crimes on the prison community, and then talk about kind of some broader lessons, because why not? So,
Why not?
very briefly, Jeffrey Dahmer, it's safe to say that the crimes he committed were heinous. Also, I love that word, along with asinine, heinous and asinine.
Big ridiculous words, right? They sound
Honestly,
important.
I would buy anything that was named heinous and asinine. Heinous and asinine. I'm realizing how funny those are together.
T-shirt.
T-shirt. Underwear. And it's right on the back, like juicy. Heinous and asinine.
One per cheek.
One. You get to pick. So, okay. Reset.
Now to the real stuff.
Yes. So, insane crimes. He lured vulnerable young people and boys into his residence. He drugged, sexually assaulted, murdered, and dismembered them. And then his acts of cannibalism and necrophilia added an entire shit layer of shock to the already shit shocking crimes, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And his MO was centered, of course, around exerting control and dominance over his victims, reflecting some kind of deep psychological issues.
Just a titch. Just a
Right.
titch.
Just a little bit. So he was arrested in 91, confessed his crimes, and cooperated with law enforcement, probably in an attempt to further control whatever he could until he couldn't anymore. He was charged with 15 counts of murder, was convicted in 92, sentenced to multiple life terms in prison without the possibility of parole, as if I even had to say that.
Yeah. Well, in Canada, you would, not in the States.
Fair. And so he was first incarcerated at the Wisconsin Correctional Institution in Portage, but was later transferred to the Columbia Correctional Institution. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Columbia Correctional Institution. It is a maximum security prison. It houses dangerous and high-profile inmates.
If he's there, hell yeah.
Yeah. It's equipped with surveillance systems, strict inmate classification, controlled movement within the facility, and the prison aims to maintain order, minimize violence, and provide for the welfare of both inmates and staff, and make the state money. So, that last part was not in my research. No.
There just might be a, state incarceration slavery thing going on. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Just
maybe.
States get paid more if they have more beds filled.
Yes, and if they make clothing and license plates and whatever the hell they make in prisons in these friggin' factories.
For sure. I'll say this. When I lived in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, right, which is that post is home to the Leavenworth prison for the military. What they would allow before 9/11, they would allow the prisoners to make furniture and do some kind of craft and trade. And they actually sold that stuff for a decent amount. Now, I don't know what they were being paid, but I knew that
pennies on the dollar.
Oh, for sure. I knew that they got to do something with their hands. They weren't just stamping something, right? Or running something through. So, yeah. In fact, we still have that wine rack in my family's house. But they got to do that. And then decades before, they were able to they did some shoe shining. They also were barbers for just the active duty military as well. So just they had a lot of opportunities, and those just have slowly dwindled to nothing. So the prison employs inmate classification systems to group individuals based on factors such as their crimes, behaviors, risks to others. And despite this, of course, and it's challenging to completely eliminate the potential for violent encounters in a high security environment.
Yeah.
They're going to figure it out because that's all they have.
It's still a
do.
prison. Yeah.
Yeah. So life in prison for Jeffykins. Dahmer's presence posed unique challenges. His notoriety and nature of his crimes, there were great concerns for his safety. Prison officials implemented additional security measures, such as assigning him a personal escort during movement within the facility, restricting contact with other inmates, and isolating him from Gen Pop. All things that are reasonable and make sense.
Yeah. Just make sure that person escorting them is not a young man.
Yes. Or really at that point in prison, anybody probably.
True. But yeah.
So
Maybe hopefully it's a beefcake.
yes. These measures were supposed to mitigate the risk on inmate violence against him. Well, November 28th, 1994, there was an encounter between Scarver and Dahmer. Christopher Scarver, Dahmer, and another inmate, Jesse Anderson, were assigned to the same work detail in the prison gymnasium. Scarver was known for his volatile behavior and history of violence, but interacted with Dahmer and Anderson during their shared work duty, which you'd think there'd be some red flags there.
You'd think, yeah.
So Scarver's motivations for the murders were rooted in his repulsion towards Dahmer's crimes, which, bro, I get it. Scarver also claimed that Dahmer often made light of his victims and showed no remorse for his action. Also, bro, I get it. And Scarver finally believed that it was his mission from God to eliminate Dahmer and protect society from further harm. Bro, I don't get it anymore.
Yeah, so, mission from God to murder someone. You are off your rocker.
You watched the wrong Blues Brothers movie. So Scarver seized that opportunity in a secluded area of the gymnasium. He attacked Dahmer and Anderson with an improvised weapon, which was an iron bar.
Oh, geez.
Now, I don't remember in the movie from Netflix,
Didn't watch it.
Anderson being involved in that attack, which would be very incorrect. I'd have to go back, and I really don't want to. I don't want to give it another watch. Anyway, so Scarver bludgeoned both of the men. Scarver killed Dahmer instantly and critically injured Anderson, and then prison staff did respond quickly, but a couple whacks with an iron bar. I mean, you don't need much time for that.
No, that'll fuck you up.
And then Scarver and Anderson were transported for medical treatment. Now, Christopher Scarver, let's just talk a little bit about him. He had a troubled past characterized by a history of violent behavior, and prior to incarceration, he was convicted of murder in a separate case and was sentenced to a life sentence. His propensity for violence and previous criminal record provide important context to kind of understand kind of why he did what he did, and why I'm guessing a little bit that it was just the short fuse where he was like opportunist and then he explained it away later. That's what my guess is. In terms of his psychological profile, the analysis of Scarver suggests this is going to be, everybody's going to be like, duh, JT, but humor me. Suggests the presence of a personality disorder, possibly antisocial personality.
Duh, JT.
Thank you. And that needs to be a sound effect. People with this disorder often exhibit a lack of empathy. So here's the thing. This disorder exhibits a couple of characteristics. One, a lack of empathy, which is one of the things he didn't like about Dahmer. A disregard for societal norms, samesies with what he didn't like about Dahmer, and a propensity for impulsive and violent behavior, which was another thing that he complained about with Dahmer. Hypocrite? A criminal?
Maybe.
Don't say. His intense hatred towards Dahmer, along with Carver's distorted moral beliefs, align with some of the characteristics associated with the disorder as well. Now, Scarver's account, he provided an account of the incident, actually multiple accounts, most of them the same. He details his deep-seated animosity towards Dahmer and his belief in his divine mission to rid the world of Dahmer's evil. He perceived himself as an instrument of justice, driven by a sense of righteousness in his actions. Now, honestly, I've heard this before, right? We've heard this before, and we'll talk about kind of what happened to him after this in a second.
Yeah.
In terms of public perception and inmate reactions to Dahmer's notoriety and the gruesome nature, as mentioned before, elicited some strong reactions from public and fellow inmates. Some individuals expressed curiosity or fascination towards Dahmer, but many others regarded him with contempt and saw him as deserving of violence or even death. And his presence in the prison community alone created a dynamic that could potentially lead to conflicts and violent incidents. All he had to do was sit down at the wrong place at lunch, right?
Yeah.
Which I'm sure he wasn't allowed to go to. So in terms of prison culture, and if you're a regular listener here, you probably know. But in terms of prison, These environments often develop their own internal hierarchies and power dynamics. Individuals like Scarver, with a history of violence or a perceived moral code, might gain respect or influence within the structure with violence, and his act of violence against Dahmer was probably an attempt to establish his reputation and dominance within the prison community. Or it was just him being a dick. It's one of the two, or both. Scarver's mental state played a huge role in the events leading to the murder. An intense hatred towards Dahmer, like I said, the moral beliefs and history of violence. I mean, it was just a perfect storm. And his mental state really underscores the importance of mental evaluations and interventions within a prison system. You can't just put somebody in a cell who has serious issues, legitimate issues, and hope things go well.
Agreed. Yeah.
Right. If you truly want to lessen the amount of violence within prisons, you need to be able to be proactive rather than reactive. Giving somebody an additional sentence or punishing somebody is absolutely not the same as providing them with a service that helps them figure out why they do what they do.
Agreed.
So, in terms of the investigation and legal proceedings from this, following the incident, like I said, prison officials responded promptly. They secured the crime scene, basically initiating an investigation. Statements were taken from witnesses, and evidence, including the weapon, were collected. The investigation aimed to establish the sequence of events and gather information regarding the motivation. Now, for Scarver, he faced penalties for the murder. In 1995, he pleaded guilty, but insane, resulting in ultimately his confinement to a mental health institution. Scarver remains incarcerated to this day, serving his sentence in a secure mental health facility. Now, a crime is a crime, whether you're in prison or not, and you have to prove insanity legally, legal insanity in the same kind of courtroom, the same kind of situation. So it's fascinating that he succeeded in that, because that does not happen very often.
No. Legal insanity too in the States is not the same as in Canada.
Oh, I'm sure.
From what I understand, like, if he was ever deemed to not be insane, he would probably end up right back in the Gen Pop.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Whereas in Canada,
absolutely.
like, for what was his name? The guy who murdered Tim McLean and on the Greyhound in Canada.
Right.
Once he was deemed sane, he was released. Right.
Oh yeah, no.
So that it's a very different thing. Although he was also already in prison for a horrible crime, probably, right? So he murdered someone already. So he was not going to be let out. No. But I mean, it does have a difference depending on what country you live in, what could happen after.
Oh, for sure. Here's the thing. I think a lot of people are possibly guilty by reason of insanity, and they succeed in that defense, and they go to an institution, and that institution doesn't do what they should do. And therefore, we don't see folks get out.
Yeah.
And so maybe for some of those folks, that's a good thing. However, if we're not trying, but we're also not trying with the general free population, right?
No, the United States is definitely not. Yeah.
Why would we?
Whereas in Canada, it's still a terrible system, but the idea is to work to release them at some point. That's why it's like 25 years to life. And after a certain amount, after the 25 years, they start having the ability to at least go for parole hearings.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
there's no 100-year sentences in Canada.
Nope. So, in terms of Dahmer's murder, the public reaction was meh. and I'm joking.
And I don't blame them. I don't.
I don't either. It did vary.
He was a horrible human. He murdered so many people. Like, awful, awful person. I understand.
Some expressed relief, satisfaction that Dahmer had met a violent end. And like you said, I get it.
I don't have that wish on anyone, but I understand people's.
Yes.
I understand what people are thinking. It's not me.
And even now, obviously, there was a contingency of folks that were upset that Dahmer was murdered for some reason in terms of like fandom, which is weird.
That's gross.
But others did seem to raise concerns about inmate safety, the duty of care within correctional facilities, and the potential for vigilantism, right?
It is still everyone's right as a prisoner to be kept safe.
Yes.
They might be a horrible murderer, whatever it is, but when they're incarcerated, they are supposed to be kept safe. That is the whole idea of incarceration. So,
Oh,
yes, it is wrong that he was murdered. He was a terrible person. He probably deserved it, but still, it's wrong.
oh yeah. So the murder of Dahmer had a significant impact on the prison community. It highlighted the delicate balance between inmate safety, staff responsibilities, and the rehabilitative nature of corrections. The incident exposed the vulnerabilities within the prison system and raised concerns about the potential for violence within correctional facilities. The case of Christopher Scarver and Jeffrey Dahmer also raises ethical questions regarding the duty of care towards inmates. It underscores the importance of ensuring the safety and well-being of all individuals within the prison system, regardless of their crimes or notoriety. Balancing the need for inmate safety with the principles of justice and rehabilitation poses ongoing challenges for corrections. Once again, not telling anybody anything they don't know. Duh, JT. I'll do it to myself.
Yeah, exactly right.
Right?
Underfunded. It's all about profit, usually in the States. So yeah, it's not really about keeping prisoners safe. It's just about making money and doing it as cheap as possible because it's a corporation.
Absolutely. And mental health and well-being of both inmates and staff plays a crucial role in creating a safe and rehabilitative prison environment. And yes, inmates are most certainly not there's no focus of I would say there's very rarely a focus on rehabilitation or mental health and well-being for inmates. There is also a dire need for mental health and assistance for staff as well. That is a shit place to be in.
I mean, they won't even give mental health treatment to the average American.
Nope.
So, yeah, I mean, they're not giving it to anyone.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I'm calling for access to mental health resources, comprehensive psychological evaluations when needed, and training for staff so they can contribute to early identification and intervention of situations that could escalate into violence. And I'm not talking reactively, I'm talking proactively. If you see somebody who is showcasing characteristics of possible short fuse or, just a propensity for violence, you can see it. So, like, I don't have much more to say other than that. I mean, the murder serves as a reminder of the ongoing challenges faced by the prison system and the need for continuous evaluation, improvement, and support to ensure the well-being of both inmates and staff. But also, whoa.
And I mean, just like prison staff and the inmates, and this is actually this is an area of the medical care in Canada which is lacking. Everyone should have access to mental health care for free. It shouldn't be, can I afford to fix my brain? Right. It should be, this is a basic right to be able to figure out what's going on up here and try to make it work better for you. And in Canada, that's one thing that is not covered.
It's so interesting to hear you say that, because for me here, I should not go bankrupt trying to keep myself healthy. Right? Like, physical well-being is so focused on in terms of cost that they don't even consider the cost of the mental health, because we can't even think about that yet, because we can't figure out the first thing. So,
like, it's like we were discussing with your dad today.
Right.
My mom had a knee replacement and she paid $40. I think it was $40 a day for like 2 or 3 days to have a private room. That was the whole cost of the knee replacement. She just had another little surgery recently, an outpatient, free. She has another little procedure she has to go get done in a couple weeks here. It'll be free. It's
and conversely, these
are all in hospitals. These are all surgical procedures.
And as
no cost.
As I wrote to you, 4.5 years later, I'm almost done paying off my youngest son. Now, first off, disgusting, because I also have insurance.
Yeah, imagine you didn't have insurance.
Right? I do understand the fact that we spent 2 weeks in the NICU. However, a family should not go. Now, we didn't. Thankfully, obviously, we're very lucky, but a family should not go bankrupt by having a child. and which oh, by the way, is what is being forced upon women now.
Yeah.
Um, and
Or
other
cancers
people,
or anything. Yeah.
right? So I'm gonna step off of my soapbox and call this case closed. It was very final, very definitive. It is over
Yes,
for
it
Jeff
is.
and or Jeffy Kish.
Jeffy.
Um, and say thanks for listening and yeah. Thanks for listening and good riddance.
Yes. Good riddance to bad rubbish. Because that's Dahmer.
Oh God, every day.
Again, I would never wish anyone to be murdered, but
No.
also he's a terrible human. So whatever. I can
Absolutely.
get over it pretty fast.
That is not one that I will shed a tear for.
No, I won't.
Nope. Oh, thanks everybody for tuning in. Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning into Brew Crime. You can find us on all social media platforms at Brew Crime. We have a Facebook group at Brew Crime the Group. If you'd like to support the show, head to patreon.com/brewcrime now. The money goes towards upgrading equipment and making the show that much better. You get one bonus episode a month, as well as early ad-free access to our episodes. So shout out to our Patreon supporters, True Crime Nana, 3 Beers In Podcast, and The Faves of Our Lives. Peace.
This is Brew Crime. Imagine Brew Crime 2.0. Brew Crime on tap.
Yes.
That's all I'm saying. Join us.
All cases in Brew Crime are written by Mike and JT or a writer we credit on the episode, and sources are put into our show notes for each episode. We always want to give credit to the people that research the cases we talk about. Check out our store at tpublic.com/stores/brew-crime-podcast, where you can purchase gear like t-shirts, phone cases, stickers, pillows, and all kinds of other cool stuff. Brew Crime's intro was created by Mike using Creative Commons Attribution licensed audio from purple-planet.com, soundbible.com, and freesoundeffects.com. Logo designed by Ben Greenberg. Thanks for listening to this episode of Brew Crime Podcast.
Hey guys,
I'm Sarah,
and I'm Stephanie.
and we're the hosts of
Dead Time Stories.
Dead Time Stories
With a Z.
is a weekly podcast where we tell you stories of ghosts, hauntings, mysteries, conspiracies,
The supernatural, paranormal,
the generally eerie, spooky.
and all around weird.
If you like scary stories, witty banter, and classy broads,
We're your ghouls. Gals. Some of our stories include Eastern State Penitentiary.
No.
And where is it? Where is
Does it sum up 12? The Gettysburg Dime Museum.
They were like, show starts at 5, Mr. President. He was like, thank you, 5. No, 70. He was like, thank you, 5.
Fort Mifflin.
So the Americans burned down their own fort. They were like, oh, you British
want this? Come and get
welcome
it.
to Philly.
And more.
New episodes are posted Thursdays at midnight on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, and Stitcher.
Listen and subscribe, rate and review today.
So
Yeah.
for those of you who don't know, it is my mission in life to eventually make Mike do a spit take. It's going to happen at some point. I'm going to do it.
My
So
poor keyboard and microphone.
what he did, which
Which one is that called again?
Reds.
No, not that one. The other one that I was trying to do. Oh shit, what's it called? I get notifications for it all the time, and then I forget to go to it. Occupy Democrat started it.
I have no idea.
It was it's pretty good, and I just don't go there. I will find it.